Welcome back, class. Today it's story time with Mrs. Maddox. Today our story is called The Gettysburg Address. Well, it's more of a speech than a story. But anyways, so Gettysburg Address is a speech that Abraham Lincoln is going to give when they dedicate the new cemetery in Gettysburg. So as we know, the Battle of Gettysburg was a lot for people to handle. Emotionally, physically, there was a lot of deaths, a lot of people wounded there, and there was a lot to clean up from it. So in November, which was, several months after the battle, because the battle took place in July, they're going to make a cemetery there to honor the lives of those who fought there. Now, Abraham Lincoln's going to give this speech. Now, there's not a lot of pictures of him there because his speech was so short. There's only one picture, and he's kind of lost in the crowd. Yes, we know he's super tall, but when you're in a huge crowd and you're sitting down, it is still hard to see you. So Lincoln's going to give this speech November 19th, 1863. So the way this is going to work, so I'll read through the speech, and then I'll go through it bit by bit, just like normal. First, we do the first read through, then we go through and dissect it. So here's the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of it as a final resting place for those who died here, that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember, what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. So what a moving speech he gave here. So just imagine you're sitting there in the crowd. The war has been going on for a couple years, and you're scared, as you might be right now, as we're living through a historical moment. And your president comes on and gives this speech. You just feel kind of safe now, that he feels that we can, we need to keep moving. We can't forget what they did here, but we need to honor the work that they have already completed and finish it. So Lincoln, great leader in this, Gettysburg Address. It's one of the most famous speeches ever. So you might have heard, the beginning, 7 years ago. You might be like, oh, yeah, this sounds familiar now. So some cool things about this speech. Repetition's used. So as we know, repetition is used in order for the speaker to point something out, something he wants the audience to really take away from this. Now, one interesting thing in the speech, he never uses the word Confederate or Union or the bad guys or the good guys. He does use one term throughout the whole thing that kind of shows his thought process of what he wants people to take away. Now, if you notice in this, there is a term that's used over and over again. The term nation is used several times throughout this, especially at the beginning here. We see it used. He doesn't say just the winners, just the losers, just the good guys, just the bad guys, just the Union, just the Confederate. No, he uses the word nation. And remember, in his inaugural speech, he said he wanted everyone to be united. Now, by using the term nation, he's showing unity here. And he's not showing what side he's on. He's saying as a nation, we need to honor those that have died here. Because both sides lost people there. Both sides are still considered Americans in his eyes. So he wanted to honor them, and he uses the word nation, which is very powerful. Okay. Now we're going to get into dissecting it. I know some of you like to dissect it. So I have helped you out here. So that way when you answer your questions on your worksheet, this, you can use to help guide you. So a little interesting fact about this 7 years ago part. You might be wondering, what in the world does 4 mean? So score means 20. So he says 4 of them. So we know 20 times 4 is 80. Plus 7 makes 87. So he's saying 87 years ago, our fathers, so we're talking about the founding fathers here, brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now you might remember this from when we talked about the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Even though we know not everyone followed that all men are created equal piece, because, people had slaves, especially our founding fathers. So here he goes, reminding us of our roots, that 87 years prior to this is when we declared our independence, which isn't that long. Only 87 years ago that we started our country, but now we're in a civil war. Yikes. So 87 years ago, the founding fathers made a country built on ideas of equality. So he's reminding us of, those core things. Okay, next one. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. So conceived means to be born. So we have this new idea, from our new nation being formed. And so endure means to last. So now to sub in those words, we are now engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so born and so dedicated can last. So we're trying to figure out, can a country actually make it? The Civil War is a great test. Are we strong enough? So we have come to dedicate a portion of it as a final resting place for those who died here, and that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. So the war we are in will test our country. Will we make it? We are here to honor those who died in order for our country to live longer. So he's, reminding us people died here because they believed our country should exist. And we need to remember that. It's a very powerful statement here, especially if you're a family member, lost their life. You were reminded, wow, he really wants to honor those that have lost their lives, no matter what side they were on. Okay, next part. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate. Consecrate just means to declare or announce. So we cannot make a loud announcement, not hollow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have declared it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. Now, you might have heard the phrase before, never forget, when it comes to 9/11. It's another, national moment that we had that we don't want to forget what happened, because we want to honor those that have died here. So here's a paraphrase. We cannot make an announcement bigger than the one they made when they died here. The world will always remember the actions made here, not always the words that were said here. So he said, people might not remember the speech I'm giving, but they'll remember how brave men lost their lives here to die for a worthy cause of saving their country. Okay, next part. It is for us the living rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who have fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. So it's our job to finish the work they started, so their work is not wasted. So here he's also reminding his country, we're not done yet. And in order to honor those that have lost their lives, let's finish what they started. Don't let the work that they've already done be wasted. Let's finish this war and, be united once again. Finale. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. So here he's reminding us of some of the things we stand for. We have a government that is by the people and for the people. That means, the people have a choice in picking our leaders and our laws. So he's reminding us, remember why we started this country. We wanted a government that represented the people. So we paraphrase. We now need to work even harder in order to honor the men that gave their lives here so our country and our ideals can survive. So there you go. There is Gettysburg Address. I hope this helps, and I will talk to you guys later.